I'll be talking about solar and whether it makes sense. So as you guys know, things can be scary sometimes. So when we're used to something or we've been using something for a long time, it can be difficult to switch to something with confidence that it's going to work, right? So I feel like that's a large reason why the international community has been struggling to move over to renewable energy sources. A lot of people are like, but what if the sun doesn't shine or the rivers aren't flowing or the wind isn't blowing? And so I decided I'd make a little presentation to reassure people that maybe this can work, maybe we can use it. Or I guess I'll tell you at the end whether we can use it. Okay, so if you're talking about anything and whether it will work, you probably want to talk about it on many different levels. So we're going to talk about what it will mean for the world, what it might mean for our country, and what it might mean for BBD here at home. So on a global level, we're having an energy crisis right now, by the way, in case you didn't know. So the last energy crisis we had was actually based on oil shortages due to instabilities in the Middle East, right? The world has changed a little bit. We're much more reliant on natural gas, actually. So in 2021, when we were recovering from COVID, suddenly everyone wanted gas again because people were going back to work and such. And then bam, Russia was like, we're going to invade, the Ukraine, because why not? And as you can see, that just made all the prices for these natural resources spike. So what can solar do? Is solar the answer? Well, it's part of the answer. So solar is a renewable energy that people don't quite trust, but between 2021 and 2022, you can see that the demand for energy caused people to turn towards renewable energy sources like wind and solar power. And it saw a 70% increase in how wind and solar met those needs. So you can see that people are turning towards renewable energy to meet the requirements of ever-growing economies. And since everyone's economies are linked, one country turning to solar lightens the load on all other countries and also will increase the demand for solar. Now, let's talk about the power situation here in South Africa. Now, the issues with our power started happening in the 2010s because the power stations were all built around reservoirs of coal, interesting fact, and then the coal ran out. And then they had to start driving coal to these power stations, and then all the problems started. And they were like, we're gonna load shed for like a year, don't worry about it. We're in 2023 now, and we're in stage 6 load shedding. Now, I could expand on this, but I don't feel like I really need to say any more on it. So can solar help South Africa? Now, the facts are solar can help. That's as simple as it really is. The problem that we have in South Africa is, will we switch? Now, South Africa actually has a great climate for solar energy. It's the renewable energy that we're the most suited for. We don't have consistently high wind speeds, and building hydroelectric plants, we have a few, also a few solar stations and a few wind plants, but those are in very isolated areas. Whereas on average, there is 60% sunshine over the entire years, excluding nights. So we can actually provide solar energy for most of the year in South Africa. Will we? So there are talks that Cyril, our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in case anyone didn't know, will be switching to solar and other renewable sources of energy to account for the rises in energy requirements in our country as well. Now, those plans are only predicted to finish in 2024. Given that nothing has happened there, I doubt it will be completed in 2024. So we're going to have to come up with our own solutions. Now that brings us to BBD. So what are we doing right now in BBD, right? What can we do during load shedding? So we could get upset at ESCOM, as you do, grab some candles and some torches and, you know, hustle down. But thank goodness, BBD actually has a generator on the roof, as you guys probably know. And that is what provides energy when there is load shedding in Rosebank. Now, what would happen if we replaced or maybe added to the system, this backup energy system, using solar panels? So I went and did a little bit of a purely financial calculation. And just to be clear, a lot of estimations were used and approximations. And I actually got some information from our facilities manager, but I'm concerned that I can't give that information away. So I will be using a hypothetical company that I made, right? So let's talk about the generator, right? I don't know how much they paid for the generators, but they have 2 generators. I'm assuming like a 20 kVA generator each. 1 kVA generator right now, I'm not sure how it cost back then, was 110,000 Rand. So for 2 generators, that's double the price, obviously. And here's the diesel cost per liter. These are just, I'm just showing you kind of the assumptions I made and what I used to do my calculations. So the cost of diesel per year is roughly 108,000 Rand, which you could use to buy an entire extra generator on a yearly basis. Now, let's talk about solar installation. You might think the actual panels are what get expensive, but in actual fact, what is expensive are the batteries that are used to store the power generated by the solar panels, that and the inverters, but the inverters aren't so bad. So here I did some costs that just kind of per unit costs for each thing, right? So 0.5 kilowatt solar panel is 2,600 Rand. The cost for a 1 kilowatt inverter is 1,650 Rand, and the cost per 1 kilowatt hour of battery storage is 4,200 Rand. So you need quite a lot of that storage to account for the times when the sun isn't shining, like at night when you want it to continue, or when there are a few hours of load shedding and no sun. So the average yield of one of those solar panels is about 300 watts. This is average. The peak is about 360. You can get it. It varies throughout the day depending on the sun and the angle of the sun, right? So the cost to install the system, it's kind of very high, as you can see. So we'll need about 150 solar panels, 30 kilowatt hours of battery storage, 54 kilowatts of inverter power, and the actual installation cost to get someone and install the system is about 100,000 Rand, for a total cost of about 660,000 Rand. So as you can see, 660 versus around 300,000 for the generators, it's definitely much more expensive to install the system than to get 2 generators, which is, I think, where the fear comes in. But I took quite a few things into account, and I did a little Excel magic, and I took in inflation, rising diesel costs, consistent load shedding based on the patterns we've had in the past year, and I looked into what the 10-year projection for money-wise would be for installing a solar system. Importantly, I also assumed that you'd be paying back the system over the length of 7 years. So as you can see, not only do you save a hell of a lot of money, over the space of 10 years, if you use the solar system, the company can save 10.3 million Rand. The cash flow will be less of an issue since you don't need to buy diesel monthly. So instantly, this system will cause cash flow to come into the company. And obviously 10.3 million Rand is not something to scoff at. So now we've talked about that. Does BBD have the space? The answer, yes. I did a little trip up onto the roof and did some measurements. I even climbed up that ladder. You see, it was very scary. So the roof of the bar has around 104 square meters. That part that I climbed up onto is around 81 square meters. And if you put like a little roof over the smoking area, which would provide a little shade, that's about 50 square meters of space. Now, the amount of space that this will need is actually around 73 square meters. So you could honestly just use the roof of the bar and have enough space for just the solar panels. The batteries would be difficult to store there. So I would probably recommend that part of the roof because there's like a little hole there that's good for the batteries and stuff. Okay. Now let's talk about this. That was a lot of information. I'm sorry. Does it make sense? Yes, it would make a lot of sense for all companies, especially in South Africa, to move over to solar because of load shedding and the fact that power is so expensive right now in South Africa. They would actually be saving a whole lot of money over a long period of time, right? We didn't talk about the environmental effects of this because I feel like it's almost self-explanatory. Obviously, if you're not burning diesel for 4 hours, 8 hours a day, then you're saving a lot of money and the environment, the flowers, the birds and the bees. So that's an obvious benefit to this. And of course, who doesn't want a little shade over their smoking area? You know, like that would be quite nice, I think. Not that I smoke. And that's the conclusion. Solar, does it make sense? It makes sense everywhere. The whole world should be moving to solar. Thank you.